All right, last night was a special night at Citi Field as the Mets hosted the first ever Pride Night for LGBT for any of the 4 major leagues here in New York. The man who threw out the first pitch was Billy Beane, a former major leaguer who came out. Now he is the MLB Vice President for Social Responsibility and Inclusion. Mr. Billy Beane joins us. Billy, thanks for being here.
I appreciate it.
All right, let's start this off right away because there are 2 Major League Baseball executives that are named Billy Beane. One is the Oakland Athletics general manager. That is not you.
And the namesake of Moneyball.
Right.
Yeah.
But you guys were actually teammates at one time. I'm sure there are plenty of people have confused you two, and I'm sure there are great
you have
stories.
No idea. When we're not confused, it's more of a surprise. I was away from baseball a long time, and he has been not within the industry, you know, a big name, but when the Moneyball movie came out and Brad Pitt was playing his character, I wrote a book 10 years ago, and it was in pre-production to make a movie, and so everyone's signals were crossed that Brad Pitt was playing Billy Beane, and it's a wonderful gesture to have someone like that. But Billy Beane and I played on the same team in 1988. He's a great guy. He's been a friend ever since. He's been really, really supportive of me coming back to baseball. But the power of the cinema, people, you know, the whole sabermetric world and how that shift in baseball, he's a big name. And it's not a bad guy to get confused with. But our jobs are certainly different. We make fun of each other because now I get confused for him. But before Moneyball, most of the people in the Bay Area thought that he was me, and so there was a little alignment with, you know, my sexual orientation, and I felt bad for him. But he's one of the rock parts of our sport, and he's really made people get better all throughout baseball, and he's a good friend.
So your role now is to kind of help set some guidelines for inclusion, not just in the clubhouse of Major League Baseball teams, but really in the front office and any other department as well. What would be a victory for you? What is victory?
Well, I have to say, looking back over the last, I've been back 2 years now, and last night's a victory, a perfect example of that. Last night was a culmination of 2 years of work with the Mets, creating relationships of trust. When I was hired, there was no real definition for the job. It was just the time was right to expand the conversation of inclusion. Baseball has been the marker for social responsibility issues ever since Jackie Robinson ran onto the field 70 years ago for the Brooklyn Dodgers. And so we have a high standards to try to live up to.
Let's talk real quick about Daniel Murphy, because last year you had a chance to visit the Mets clubhouse, and Daniel Murphy disagreed with what he called your lifestyle. Right. You came back and said that you admired him as a family man and for speaking up for his truth. Right. It wasn't a contentious argument between you two. No. Does that speak to the path to unity, the way both of you have handled that? I
think so. If we're going to talk about inclusion, we have to include everything. And so
even those who disagree with you, which is the whole point.
I said I wrote a column. I ran home after that day. They wanted to ask him that question. They were waiting for this day. It might have been the first time in history a player was asked about an openly gay teammate or person in their clubhouse at the big league level. Daniel spoke from his heart. He spoke the truth. I wrote that I admired that and that he was as a consistent figure in the big leagues as anybody that I'd ever seen. I was there for 2 days. We treated each other with 100% mutual respect. And the thing I wrote about was that that day, even if he doesn't agree with me or the way I was born, he called it a lifestyle. There was a moment where he said that he did not understand how that word affects people in the LGBT community, because I can tell you I'm born the way I was born, and I did not want to be the way I am, but it took me 30 years to accept that. So I have to let someone like Daniel or people that live in that sphere, they need time for change too. My parents did. My parents it wasn't a great day the first day they found out. So for me, we all had one thing in common that day, and that was baseball. And that was enough to start a dialogue. And Daniel and I have had a very interesting relationship. The guy has been playing amazing baseball since that time. Had a great run with the Mets in the playoffs last year. Congratulating him all the way through. And him and his wife could not have been more supportive of that conversation. And I think something good came out of it.
again, I think the way you guys handled it is really what came out of it. And in this nation of many dissenting opinions, doesn't that seem to ring true in many contexts?
Well, to dig in and focus on the things that you don't agree on or you don't have in common, to me, is counterproductive. I've been out there in many ways. I've been in some very aggressive environments. I was never planning on being a figure for the LGBT community, but once my story came out, I was taught by people in the LGBT community how few role models that we have. So I've made it my life's mission to try to build bridges between those that might be a little bit different. You know, to sit there and you know, focus on the negative. I admire Daniel Murphy as an example. I admire anyone who plays in the big leagues, and I saw that as a challenge to be a better example. And the first true obstacle in my job, returning to baseball, how can I change a dialogue by the way I carry myself, not telling him to think differently?
And when a society does change, the question is, does it begin with tolerance, or is it completely inclusion? Are those two mutually exclusive from one another?
I think the word tolerance was a big word 10 or 15 years ago, and I think it was meant with compassion. Acceptance and inclusion are more, in my mind, positive. I don't want to be tolerated. I want to, if we're going to be friends, I would want you to accept me for the way I am. I accept that you have a gray suit on today. I'm not going to judge you.
You're not tolerating that I'm going gray and yellow today?
So, but it's important as leaders that we create a dialogue that the young players understand, and the front office. You know, the environment of baseball has been historically very conservative. You know, we're the nation's pastime. We look back in the history books and we see these legendary names. But if baseball wants to keep up and be as relevant as it has for the last 150 years, then we have to move forward, and we have to be leaders in that dialogue. So for me, being an example, something that's very important to me, not only when I walk into a clubhouse or a baseball stadium where I meet front offices with all 30 of our clubs, the example that I'm setting and the history that I have with my short time being more of a public figure, I wish there had been a dialogue going on like this when I was a player. And I see that I walked away from baseball right when I was starting to learn how to be a contributor at the big league level, and I can't get that time back or that decision. But hopefully we'll keep players from feeling isolated regardless of the subject.
Well, we are thankful that sports is taking a role in social advancement, and we're grateful that you have such a big role in this as well. He is baseball's VP of Social Responsibility and Inclusion, Mr. Billy Beane. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Very much appreciate it.
Great day yesterday.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Stick around. We'll be right back.